Welcome to Artificial Breakdown, live at Inventures 2025. Let's get innovative.
Welcome to Artificial Breakdown. We're live at Inventures. Unfortunately, Carrie can't be with us today. She's doing a presentation at Upperbound and is furiously driving back to Calgary. So we will see her for the afternoon sessions. But
I'm thrilled to welcome Sabaa Quao with me today.
And he has an impressive resume. I was going through LinkedIn, trying to grab all the titles and everything he's working on, and getting a little PTSD with my own kind of resume because we have similar kind of ventures, but it's nice to see another entrepreneur like him. So it's the founding president at PlusCo Venture Studios. Yep. Also the co-founder of Wealthy Works Daily and the executive director and co-founder of Film Minute. As I catch them all? Well, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I mentioned, as I was going through all the things you have on the go, I just felt like I was reading a version of another version of myself with just so many side hustles. And I think that's kind of, I come across people who love the entrepreneurial life and just constantly coming up with new ideas, new ventures. How are you juggling all this?
So I think there's a difference between early in my career as an entrepreneur versus now.
Right.
So in my early 20s, start of the digital era, starting my own firm, the grind was all me. You worked 7 days a week. You'd do an overnighter once or twice a week. You hit your deadlines, but so much pressure was on me.
Right.
But as you get to this stage where you just can't grind the same way, but also the pace is different. When we talk about the digital era was one thing, but the pace of the AI era is frighteningly much faster. Right. So you would actually burn yourself out. I think part of the professional skill is to think about pacing differently. And so with the Venture Studio, because I'm working with 7 startups, they each have their founders. So I am not in the day-to-day grind. I'm there to think about the bridge between what they're doing in AI and fintech and the enterprise applications or use cases that are relevant to Cossette and Plus company clients. Right. So it just doesn't take the same physical toll on me. And I'll say it's a physical toll because it was just that intensity of grind for a startup. And I'm much more of the facilitator and the strategist. Yes, I'm in to co-pitch with them and collaborate, but it's a much easier role as an entrepreneur than in my 20s.
I get that. Yeah. So PlusCo Venture is kind of that facilitator to help with kind of what stage of companies are you talking about?
So we are only going to look at companies that already have some expression or iteration of what they're going to build. I won't take on anyone that's just, I have an idea.
Right.
Because really what I'm trying to think about is the speed to commercialization that is useful for some clients or categories in our portfolio. So I have to be able to walk in short order with a prototype or an articulation of the use case in a way that they can see, touch, and understand and build empathy for in terms of this is useful for our business or for our audience. So the companies range in terms of from early stage, but some of them are already generating a few $1 million in revenue.
Right.
So they are sustaining themselves. And my job is to figure out, well, is there an application or an extension of that business that might be 3, 4, 5, or 10 times larger than what they're doing now?
Right. Uh-huh. What's that? Okay. So you're still connected to Cossette. That was another line item on your LinkedIn, but it's kind of a dotted line. Is that right?
Yes. So I spent my last role at Cossette was Chief Creative and Innovation Officer. And so I did 2.5 years as Chief Creative and then Chief Creative and Innovation Officer. And what it did was it gave me comparative insight across such a wide range of clients and projects. That was the first piece that was, it's an incredibly privileged position to be in, to hear all the different kinds of problems that companies are facing specifically around marketing.
Yeah.
The second piece of that came out of, think of when ChatGPT started and hit the public consciousness. And suddenly there was this parlance, or this noise, I'll call it, around of like, agencies are, you're in trouble. And like, no, they're not. But clients started to ask for different things. Can you come and give us a point of view on where and how we're going to use AI for marketing?
Right.
How do we think about creative technology? How do we think through and work through the use cases that are going to change our business? So there's one thing to have our own industry's existential worry, let alone clients and their own existential worries, and looking to companies like Cossette for leadership or thought leadership, but in a very practical way. Because remember, agencies create real things. Right. So we don't just stay talking. We create things that are actually going to have some kind of impact with the audience. As the cadence started to rise on those kinds of requests, what I pitched to the CEO and the CFO is, we have so many use cases that we really can't be dilettantes about AI. And so if I can work with a handful of AI and fintech companies who this is what they do, it is a faster way for us to gain depth of skill, but bridge that into the use cases of our clients in the categories that they're in. So we incorporated the Venture Studio in November. I became president of the Venture Studio in December. And here we are at the 6-month mark.
Right.
And I'll share with you some of the momentum, but it's fast. Yeah. But that was a transition from Chief Creative and Innovation Officer into becoming president of the Venture Studio.
Interesting. So, and then were the companies that is the business development side, companies that are coming to Cossette that no longer fit that model, a little bit moving more towards this new model now. So is that the referral, or are you outgoing getting your own businesses?
The businesses have to fit an overall thesis. One, I am only dealing with AI and fintech companies.
Oh, I see.
And the fintech is, I'm a fintech entrepreneur for at least 5 years now. So it's a category that I know and where and how that creates value. And AI was just in terms of, we're seeing this fastest movement of an industry in technology that we've ever seen, and we dare not miss.
Right.
And so from a new revenue, new business models and use cases, it was a reason to say, let's only look at these 2 kinds of companies. How I found the first 7 companies ends up being, extending very directly from a lot of the relationships I have already in the startup community. And so many people approach me and they ask, how would you consider coming on board as a founder, or could you come? And so now my answer is no, but if you fit my thesis, I want to pull you into this cohort. Right. And you will hear me use the word cohort. And that's very influenced by Rotman's Creative Destruction Lab, DMZ, District 3, where they bring in groups of companies, or Y Combinator. And there are these groups of companies that are brought through as cohorts. Right. So I said, let me have a starting cohort. And I have 7 because I said, that's probably all I can manage as I'm figuring out the model.
Right.
But the idea then is to continue rolling these cohorts as you go. And cohorts are a way for you to dive into the different verticals, different kinds of AI, different kinds of fintech, but they also have an economic value that's worth tracking. And the influence on the economic value was based on, I had spent a day at Rotman's Creative Destruction Lab. I was invited as a guest to review the 18 AI companies that were vying for a spot. And I saw some stunning and impressive things, probably 6 months or a year before these things even hit the market. And then I said to the head of the lab in Toronto, Avi Goldfarb, I said, how much equity value has been raised over the 11 or 12 years of the Creative Destruction Lab? How much equity value has been raised from all the companies that went through? And he said, $40 billion. And that was an aha to me about the economic value of a group of startups at the start of an industry.
Yeah.
There is nothing that an agency is doing right now that is going to reach $40 billion in value.
No.
So it made me think about collections and collections of startups. And I have to say, it has hyper accelerated how quickly I learn something because they're in so deep in the verticals that they're working in.
Right.
There was nothing I was doing that was requiring me to learn that fast. But this pace of learning gives you a sense of where an industry is going, where the opportunities are, and the comparative insight in terms of where and how we're going to apply and use these for some of our clients.
Right.
And so and as I said, in 6 months, we started to rack up some wins.
Oh, that's amazing. I can just imagine I always find it's invigorating being around startups, the ideas and just the energy and the excitement. It takes years and years to beat that light out of your eyes in an agency, right? Whereas I just think there's something energizing being around those people.
Absolutely. Well, in my 30-year career, I think I've been an entrepreneur 90%, over 90%. So it's so ingrained in me and so familiar. And I know what to do with it. I know what to do with that energy. I know what to do with things as they're taking shape.
Right.
And that really the gain I have on having 30 years of experience is helping them shape it faster in some way that can commercialize at a larger scale.
Yeah. What are some of the common mistakes you see them making, like when you're dealing with entrepreneurs at that level?
All of them are going to be asked by their investors how they're going to find their audience.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are going to end up spending too much money on marketing.
Right. Yeah.
So when you think of your cost of acquisition
Mm-hmm.
of a new client, I think that's the first mistake many of them are making.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the influence on that mistake was you saw the rise of DTC companies because of the pandemic and all these companies saying, well, I'm going to build my own thing and go direct to consumer. But the cost of acquisition becomes this real difficult and expensive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have a product and you say, well, I'm going to go out and find my first 100,000 customers. You and I as marketers know what it takes to go and find those 100,000 customers. But an entrepreneur who is strong in technology or in fintech or engineering may not have a sense of that marketing cost.
Right.
So that's one mistake where I say, yeah, 100,000 people as customers is hard to do.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. The second thing is associating that with a cost. And the third thing about that is it might not be the most valuable thing that you're doing. So I spent enough time in B2B, and the B2B market is sometimes 5 to 10 times larger than the consumer market.
Right.
So I do have one or two pitches where, because we've taken a B2B orientation, the companies in the receiving end of the pitch might already have 10 million customers.
Right.
I said it was hard to find 100,000. Good luck finding 10 million customers.
Yeah.
So I sometimes push them to an enterprise grade thinking about their business, because I said, if we figure that out, I think I can get you there faster.
Yeah. One to many versus one to one. Right. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I think I've seen different kind of mentalities where there's sometimes it's just tunnel vision with an entrepreneur where they are just like, I know it all. I'm going to do this. And you can, like, arrows kind of hit off the plates of armor and they bounce off, where there's others who are like sponges and want to listen to everybody and listen to some of the great advice. I was saying the other day, it's like, if someone has done this for 20 years and you were just starting, you should be hanging on every word they say, because think of all the knowledge packed into a few sentences. It's amazing. So why wouldn't you listen to that? But there is some.
You're pointing out, you come with this backfill of insight and experience. And one of the things I talk about when I switch to my strategy hat, I talk about contextual awareness. Saying sometimes they're so focused on their solution that they haven't read the field.
Right.
Because they haven't read the field, they don't see, it's a good thing and a bad thing. They sometimes don't see the opportunity, or they don't see the pitfall.
Right.
They just see this brilliance of this narrow solution that they've built.
Yeah.
Sometimes me coming in as an outsider is about saying, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
And then I bring them the comparative insight from all the client work that we're doing. I'll say, And here's why I'm saying that.
Yeah.
Because I might have seen a hint of it or a shade of it or an overlap with one of the clients that we have. And Cossette has more clients than anyone in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
The marketing and advertising agency. So I'm not coming in blind. And if I can avoid a pitfall or identify an opportunity sooner, that's to the benefit of the startup.
Yeah. Well, and there's something we said for objectivity is something that you have for a short while, right? And it's something that's so valuable. And that's why agencies are generally, even if you have an in-house agency, I think it's sometimes good to get an external one to come in and just call spades and just, they don't know the background, the politics, all that stuff. And they can say something that the other team may or may not see because they're kind of heads in the trees, right?
So you've also pointed out something that agencies know how to do well. Yeah. We've all done enough work in enough categories that we are often sitting on comparative insight that we're not using. Some clients aren't asking and they don't care.
Right.
But we are sitting on that knowledge. How many industry categories have you worked in the last 20 years?
Oh God, I couldn't tell you.
Whereas the client might only know their industry. Maybe they know 2 or 3.
Right.
But we have often been sitting in the middle of 10 or 15.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the unique combination of insights that gives us an advantage. You know, I saw something in a retail that might be useful for banking.
Yes.
Or I saw something in the sports industry that's never been done before in the insurance industry. And so we're sitting on that. So when I say, hey, creative people, let's take stock of what we know.
Yeah.
If we use it and we bring that over to another category, it's fresh. But you're not coming in with something that's completely random.
Right.
You've seen it work.
That's such a good thought. It's funny. We work with something like insurance, right? And they we want to be the best looking insurance application out there. It's like, yeah, but what about VRBO or Netflix? Like they also have great models and great UX that you could apply to the insurance category and blow all of these out of the water. It's just it's an interesting shift of you don't have to look at your own category for your competition.
In fact, it's better not to look at
yeah. Especially insurance.
So the one following the same strategy is no strategy.
Yeah.
So when you bring in something that's been proven in a different industry, not only are you bringing in something that becomes unique because you've shifted it to a different category, but you've also lowered the risk.
Yeah.
And lowering of risk is something that, I have a good rapport with chief financial officers where I'll say, even though we're bringing in creativity, part of the equation is me lowering your risk in some kind of capital investment that you're going to make. So bringing in this comparative insight, saying, I've seen this work before. I'm not coming in with something bleeding edge and random.
Right.
You're lowering risk, and that makes the check signer happy.
Yeah. That's exactly. It's a bit of security, right? Because I think there's always that, this the agency with their wild card, right? So while we're on the topic of agencies and AI, I have an opinion on this, but I'm curious to see how because you understand the model of an agency. It's made up of media and a creative team, an account team, and you've got some digital people and who knows what else, right? With AI coming in, what is the evolution that's needed, or are there risks involved? Do you see a complete detachment from the traditional model, or just curious to get your kind of, what do you think the blueprint is of modern marketing in the future?
Okay. So let's first talk about the evolution. There are going to be some patterns that we follow that we've seen before and done well at. So any of us who've had a long enough time in the industry, and I usually use the 25-year marker of the start of the digital era. So late 90s, early, all the way to that dot-com meltdown. Yeah. But think of what we went through as agencies. We had to become digital. Yeah. The typesetting industry disappeared completely. Yeah. Computers became parts of studios, and not only did they become parts of how we worked, think of all the iterations of software that we've tangled with. Do you remember Quark Express?
I do. I worked on it.
And then do you remember all the talk about the Quark killer?
Oh, yeah.
That was going to be what Adobe came in with InDesign. And so the one thing I remind people is, remember, we're really good at moving from one platform change to another, at keeping the creative agenda driving forward. Yeah. So here we are in the AI era with a whole new set of tools And we're probably some of the best equipped people in the world to deal with that kind of platform and technology and tool change, digital tools.
Right.
So that's the first advantage in terms of the evolution. Second, how are we going to use those tools? We have to be careful of the commodification of our work.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say something used to cost $10,000. In the client's head, well, that's only going to cost $100 now because of AI.
Right.
And you know that that is not true. But there will be an efficiency play in terms of costs. Think of what the cost of retouching used to be
Yeah.
at the start of our careers versus now.
Yeah.
You can actually use AI to automate your retouching.
Yeah.
So we have to think about which parts of the business become efficiencies, but they're not competitive advantages because they become industry standards.
Right.
Does anyone retouch the old way? No. Everyone retouches the new way. So there are going to be uses of AI that we're all going to evolve to, and they are industry standards, and they're not a source of competitive advantage. That's just day-to-day business.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing we have to move into with AI is, where are we using our creativity, our strategy, and our go-to-market to create new value? And that creation of new value is also a creative process, saying, no one was using these tools in generative AI 3 years ago. Now we are. But don't take it at face value. What are we creating that's actually new, that creates a premium value?
Yeah.
And what are the things that we can do that others can't do? So again, I'll go back to, well, what is it that agencies do well? Well, we don't just keep talking. We build real things. We're this last mile in terms of the thing that ends up touching an audience. So how we use all these tools and all these methods is going to be tested in some practical way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on us to learn those practical ways of what's working. How is the consumer responding? What are the things that the consumer doesn't buy into? You know, we already know that there's an AI aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, that's not last.
Yeah.
Because brands have to not converge in their expression. They actually have to stay divergent and distinct. So creative people are not going to use these tools at face value.
Yeah.
We're going to break them.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that. And some of the conversations I had around creativity and AI have been really interesting, because a lot of the time, in fact, in a lot of areas, it felt like AI is allowing people to be more creative, just because it takes away some of those tasks, like you mentioned, the prepping your files for presentation. It used to take a day, right? You would sit there, you work for 6 days of the week, making your ideas and concepts, and then you spend the last day making your presentation so you can present it to everybody.
Yeah.
Well, now you can get that day back because AI could potentially put that presentation together for you. And now you've got 7 days worth of ideas and creative thinking instead of 6. Right?
And not only do you get that day back, you're actually going to start to do completely different things with that day. And so part of it is, let's think about some of our assumptions about digital and personalization. I think personalization right now sucks. So you're online and you click something that interests you. And for the next 7 days, you're followed by that brand and then every other brand that has identified the pattern of maybe you'll be a customer. And then maybe you bought the product and you're still being followed.
Yeah, forever.
And so that assumption around personalization absolutely sucks. But it's become one of the industry norms about, oh, well, you know, we can target the consumer. The consumer is not enjoying that experience.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're going to do with that free time? I'm working with one company that has completely inverted the assumptions around personalization. I am obsessed with that because I said the entire industry is doing something that the consumer doesn't want. With that free day of time, that is what I'm learning.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to bring in to the Walmarts and the McDonald's and the TDs, saying, I don't want to do personalization the way we've done it with the assumptions around big data and targeting for the last 10 years. I want to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm saying it and saying, and here is why. And then I put the example in front of them. That's what I'm doing with that extra day.
Yeah. I love that. I totally believe that personalization has a very blurry definition. It could mean using your name in an email, which everyone does. It doesn't feel personal because everyone does it, right? But it's just, real personalization shouldn't feel like advertising,
Correct.
right? So I love that thought. It's refreshing and to hear that people are working on it too. Yeah.
And sometimes they're working on it not because they're marketers. They're working on it for another reason.
Yeah.
So the company that I spoke to about it, they're in the long pedigree in the location-based entertainment industry, um, theater and cinema entertainment, and they were working on something that was around use of AI for a kind of customized experience. And I sat there saying, you've actually inverted personalization. I want to take that into other things that I'm doing. So they didn't start off thinking about personalization. They're building something very specific, but it's the extrapolation of that that creates value in, I think, 5 other industries right away. So that's what I'm working on, alongside with helping them on their core business.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Here's a question I've had in my mind for a while. I'm curious to see what you think of this. There was an experiment a long time ago where, and I don't know much of the details other than the story, but basically 3 creative directors from 3 different agencies were brought together in this kind of experiment. So they drove them all in the same path to this place, and the path was predetermined, and they would go by certain objects that were intentionally there, and then they all came together in this room, and then they all got the same brief, and they were to come up with a campaign, and they all went separately into different rooms. They came up with a campaign, they presented them back, and all the campaigns were very similar. They had elements in them that they thought were very unique, but were literally planted along the route that they made. So they saw, the zoo was maybe something. So suddenly there was animals in the campaign. So a whole thing to kind of say, hey, we are a collection of our impressions, and the world around us comes together when we're trying to think creatively. We're using elements, and so maybe subconsciously you think it's a new idea, but you actually saw it somewhere in the peripheral or something, and it came together. And that's how we come up with creativity. And then you look at AI, which has its ability to like scour every campaign in the world and do that better. Is that a threat to creativity when you're coming up with campaign concepts or coming up with those types of things?
I think it's a threat to creativity if you accept what the AI brings you.
Right.
If we all enter similar prompts, we're all going to end up with the same averaged answer.
Yeah.
So when I say, well, creative people are going to be the first people who shouldn't accept what's been sent to us at face value. Yeah. And remember, when we think about the principles of what generative AI is, it's giving you the next plausible answer.
Right.
We don't want the next plausible answer. We're all going to get the same answer. Yeah. So we have to think about, yes, we're trying to build campaigns that have some longevity and expansiveness. We have to think about the uniqueness of what we build. And that uniqueness is not going to be completely mediated by AI.
Yeah.
We actually need some outlier thinking to break from the averaged out answer.
Yeah. I love that. And it's funny, as another term that I heard today, it was an unconscious incompetence, where it's like, if you don't understand what good creative is, or if you don't have the experience to ask the right questions, then you just accept it. Right. So there is this professionals in the creative world, especially, is just understanding that, hey, I can actually challenge this, or this doesn't feel right, or that we need to push this, or things that you kind of brought in by experience and all that kind of thing. So that's really, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about, here's another question. Sorry, random questions. No. It's just, I've been waiting to like unleash on some of the world. I've been wondering a little bit about students like coming into this world, marketing and communications and whatnot, and looking at the tasks that you used to cut your teeth on when you're, first starting out, would be stuff like building banner ads or formatting PowerPoints, or like all the stuff no one wants to do, but it allows you to kind of get honed with your skills in pretty low risk kind of jobs. Now AI comes in, and that's the immediate fodder of it taking over, because those are the jobs that are fairly repetitive and task oriented, that is fairly easy to replicate. So how do students kind of get up to speed or get into the world now that seems to be those types of jobs are being kind of replaced. So I'm curious to like, and it's because I talk to students a fair bit, just like how do you think that's evolving, or is it?
So I've been approached by a lot of students over the last day, quite excited about what I said as the path ahead. And I'm going to use this comparison again to the start of the digital era. I was probably the last year of any student entering the industry that you had to learn how to use a stat camera.
Oh, right.
And probably within 6 months of me starting to work in the industry, no one ever used a stat camera again.
Yeah.
So that's one. There's certain things that are just going to go by the wayside. So the student is actually not going to be encumbered by that whole thing. Second, because I was so digital early, I could probably at the start of my career enter any studio and be almost the most digital person in the room. And that meant that people came to me at that time in mid to late 90s, like, all right, bring it to Sabaa because he actually knows how to do this. So every time I encounter a student, I say to them, you go all in on your use of AI.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you too will enter a studio. And because it's native to you, you might know how to do things that no one in the building can do. And I practice what I preach because, I have 2 teenage sons and one of them's going into the creative industry.
Right.
I probably got Arlo his own license to ChatGPT maybe a month after mine.
Right.
Because I said, Arlo, you actually have to start using this. And I know all your profs and teachers are saying this isn't acceptable. I said
The same old. Yeah.
go and use this now. 1 year and a half later, he's now just been entered into university. But I've watched Arlo use an iPad to draw. I've seen him draw with charcoal, like at a standing level. And then he'll switch to use of AI. And then he'll use something that he's drawn and he'll start to train a model in using AI around something that he drew. His workflow can now move in any direction. So I know when he graduates from university 3 years from now, he will probably be able to do some things that I don't think I've seen anyone in an agency do. And that's what I mean by, so I say to all students, 16, 19-year-old, 20, 21-year-olds, go and start using it now because you are actually going to enter into the industry with new value.
I love that. It was interesting. My son, 18, turning 18 this week. God help us. I got him on chat, and again, his teacher's very against it, but it was interesting to see how he immediately started using it in ways that I hadn't even connected the dots on.
Exactly.
Right. So he was doing his math homework and he had filled it all out wrong. He got it wrong. It's like long division math. So he took a picture of it, stuck it in ChatGPT and said, what am I doing wrong? I'm like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. And he didn't even think that you could do it. Right. So that to me was that generation gap. I'm like, oh, wow, you are in it. And I am still trying to make these like neural connections because I'm wired a different way. Right.
I love that story because, again, when I talk about workflow, he took the thing that he had written, old world, and immediately just threw it into the new environment to solve the fix to the problem.
Right.
But that's what I mean by it's workflow.
Yeah.
And he didn't even think about where he had started or finished. He just moved towards the solution in the most efficient manner without having to go and ask for help, without pondering over it blindly.
Yeah.
And so this old world and new world skill is, I think, one of the areas of creation of value. So I have one son who is becoming a natural, but my other son reads voraciously, understands politics and sociology. So when he connects the dots,
Right.
he brings in this encyclopedic knowledge. So when he's applying something, he's doing it from a different funnel than the other kid.
Right.
But I say to both of them, you have to be creative. I don't care what you go out and do. So again, my thesis about creative people saying we have a baked in advantage going forward or backward through any situation And I've seen it with my teenagers, and that's what I want our young or entry-level staff to do. Be able to think laterally regardless of what's been put in front of you, and use the tool as you see fit. They're not going to accept the tool at face value. Your son he didn't even think about it. He didn't think about what he can't do. He just did what he needed to do.
Exactly. And it's so funny to see that. And I think that's the advantage, because especially right now, as I was telling Finn, he's like, all the companies are run, a lot of them are run by people my age or millennials or people who are not used to this. So yeah, that is true. That is the way to get in. That's amazing.
So young people really need to lean in, but it is also about enhancing their creativity.
Yeah. I love it. We're almost at time here. Do you have anything you want to get out before I wrap this up?
So one of the things that strikes me, I delivered the opening keynote.
Yeah.
And I talked about this unique window of opportunity for Canada, where, the theme was this disruptive ambition.
Right.
And there is an opportunity for Canada to change our own perspective on startups, on growth, about markets and industries and where we work. And that was really well embraced by the room.
Right.
And people have to remember, I used to do business development out of London. And so I'd be pitching projects in Prague, Rome, or it didn't matter.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you're Canadian. I remember thinking, this is amazing. You know that being Canadian out in the world makes you sometimes a partner of choice. And so one of the things I wrapped up in the keynote was, I said, you're going to start to see different leadership that comes from maybe unlikely people or unlikely places. And I said, just remember, no one necessarily expects Canada. We're a small country, but the goal is to punch above our weight.
Right.
And we already do it. So let's go to the Cannes Festival of Advertising, where last year we ranked number 4.
Right.
So US, UK, Brazil, France, Germany, Spain. But then I put up on the screen, I said, who's the smallest population in the top 7?
Yeah.
So here we are ranked number 4. And I sit on the advisory for the, Digital and Young Lions. And I said, that there's a path for us to get to number 3, number 2, and maybe even number 1. And so you see that creative ambition coming from our agencies and our creative teams. So to the rest of the room, I said, so what happens when we do that with other industries?
Right.
And I pointed out the insurance industry, where we have some of the best insurance companies in the world, Intact Insurance, Manulife Insurance, Sun Life. These are world leaders in some markets, but they're Canadian. So it's not always going to be obvious or creative and sexy. They're going to be infrastructure industries where you're going to see Canadian creativity play out. And we have the plausible path to world leadership in many verticals if we up our ambition, if we're more disruptive about our ambition. Yeah. And that was the theme, and that has been well received by the audience. And many people have been speaking to me over the last 24 hours.
Oh, right.
About, what, you're right. We weren't thinking big enough.
Yeah.
We weren't thinking about an adjacent market. We were not thinking about, and we raise our risk if we don't think creatively early.
Yeah. It's funny, creativity when it comes to business planning sounds strange, but it makes tons of sense, right? It's like thinking outside the box of like, oh, should we be changing verticals? Should we be changing our product? Even your example of like, yeah, you're building this product, but this actual thing that was almost a throwaway could actually be the thing that propels you more, as long as you have someone who can look at it and go, hey, there's a great opportunity there.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean we're going to do it in every single industry.
Yeah.
I think we need to pick some battles as a country, saying, what are we really good at? Where do we have some advantages? Yeah. And this is very normal from a business planning or an investment thesis. I said to you, I'm only working with AI and fintech.
Right.
But the branches underneath that, personalization, which I told you about.
Yeah.
I'm working with wealth management and embedded finance.
Right.
I'm working with synthetic data.
Yeah.
I'm working with a company that's basically translating expertise as software. So how you might end up with a strategy clone that you work side by side with.
Yeah, we need that.
So I'm not trying, if someone comes to me with certain categories, I just sort of say, no, I can't. I've got my central thesis.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start to see patterns in terms of where Canada starts to develop some industry leading expertise that can actually compete at international level. It doesn't have to be everything. We just need to pick some battles and go hard.
I love it because the timing couldn't be better. There's so much Canadian pride right now.
Amazing. And there's some shared ambition for sure right now, regardless of any past conflicts. I definitely noticed that everyone's like, we're all in on this pursuit.
Yeah.
And so never seen that before in Canada. I think it's going to pay off.
Well, sometimes change is good. You get forced out of your rut and you're like, oh, we should have changed a long time ago.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, even the diversification, right? Of understanding, hey, it doesn't all have to be in one spot. It's like agencies know you don't have one client. You want to have a portfolio, right?
It's also, we're seeing even regional differences.
Yeah.
So Cossette is a Quebec company,
right?
Operating internationally now in terms of the agency network. But, some of the projects that we're working on were investments that were seeded by the federal government and the Quebec government in terms of use of AI.
Right.
So we just won one of the Scale AI grants.
Oh, right.
To basically use AI as part of our operations. And we're applying it in a very specific, powerful way. But you see, Quebec has that hustle. But here I am in Calgary, and wow, you can see people saying, we are actually going to deploy capital differently from our oil and gas and natural resources path.
Right.
So you're seeing the same ambition in Alberta that is very similar to Emirates.
Right.
And that is amazing. Yeah. So you're seeing some regional differences in approaches, but we have seen that work before for Canada. Yeah. And now we're applying it just in a different way.
Yeah. It feels like a little bit of a ember that's about to like spark here, which is so exciting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Seven, I feel like we could talk all day. I was like, I didn't tell you this is actually a 4-hour podcast.
But what was really exciting is we have this overlap in terms of we know our industry.
Yeah.
From a 30-year timeline.
Right.
So we have this comparative insight. So it was so interesting to sort of exchange some of those, but even the age of our kids.
Yeah.
Just sort of saying we have this little lab of teenagers in front of us who use AI in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I feel that, wow, I've got a free window that changed my assumptions on how this technology should be used.
Oh,
are your kids gamers?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they on Discord?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen anything in agency work that is using sound the way teenagers use sound as a social?
No. And it was funny. And I was even talking to Finn about, so he used to play Minecraft, still does kind of. And he would just sit and be online with his friend, and they're barely doing anything on the game, but they were using that to communicate.
So they move between using it to communicate socially.
Yes.
And have you ever seen them collaboratively problem solving?
Yes. Yeah.
They don't need to see each other, which is why they consider Zoom corporate.
Yeah.
So they're using audio channel to socialize and problem solve in terms of coordinated activity in a game. And I said, I have not seen anything in our marketing world that has taken into account that there are a whole bunch of 15 to 25-year-olds who use that technology as a social layer and a problem-solving layer.
It's a really amazing thought because you don't really think about it, but you're right. Like we as adults don't communicate like that.
Nope.
Right. And it's almost like an always on thing where they're just, even if they're not talking, they're still available.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's true. It's so, and it's interesting to see them work together and how they half the time they're talking, half the time they aren't, but they're just sitting there, and it's a different relationship. Right.
So we've all dealt with the work from home, but is there a layer of young people who are going to stay connected through the day as they collaboratively work on a creative problem?
Yeah.
They're doing it anyway in their own way.
Even if they end up in the same buildings, like you see companies are like, everyone come in and then everyone go to your separate office. Right. So it's not necessarily collaborative, right? But if you are you're together, but you can still connect in that way, it doesn't matter where you are. It really is. I think there's going to be a huge shift in how we communicate. It's funny when you talk of AI and how the impacts that it can have, not only from just software and how we do things, but just infrastructure, like how cities are planned, how we actually change. It's like I've heard someone equate it to the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
Like buildings and everything were planned around factories and how to get to work and all that stuff. Now we're getting into this new era, and it could change everything. How we commute. Do we need highways as big as they are, or how cars are going to change because we're maybe not commuting all to a downtown every day and then scattering out to communities. Like, it's just so fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know where it all goes.
I think it's a good ride. It's an exciting time.
Exactly. Well, Sabaa, my friend, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day. I appreciate you doing this. And
That's a wrap for today's breakdown. If you have any thoughts or questions, drop us a comment or message us on social media.
You're welcome.
If you enjoyed today's chat, why not subscribe so you don't miss another episode? Thanks for tuning in. Stay charged out there.